Okay, here a video on, what shall I say, parts and pieces, a few different aspects of Inkscape and Inkstitch. So for your embroidery, most of the time you will be working with a specific color palette, and your color palette that is here on the bottom. And you can change that to your liking by here in the right bottom corner, click on the arrow, and now we have this pop-up, and that gives you all the Inkstitch color palettes of different embroidery thread. So you can go and pick your specifics. I have had that I'm mostly using the Brother embroidery one, because what I have experienced is that by creating some SVGs with different color palettes, and then load them into a Brother specific program, it will not read the colors and you get your SVG all in black. And if I was using the color specifics for the Brother embroidery, then it was able to read all the colors properly in the SVG. So if you are having issues, that could be one of your issues. So also you can create your own color palette, and you can go to the folder where you have Inkstitch installed, and you can open up one of those color palettes with Notepad, and you can go and change these values and names and numbers to whatever embroidery thread you are using or whatever you have on hand. So if you want to make a mix and match, that is possible, as long as you know the RGB values of your thread. Then you can go and create your own, and you can have it display here on the bottom. But if you make the changes, make sure, at least that is what I would recommend, make sure you give it a specific name so that you go and keep your originals. So that is that. Then in order to set the fill and to set the color of your stroke, there are people, they are using the fill and stroke. I only use the fill and stroke window here for changing the stroke style. That's the only reason basically why I'm using the fill and stroke, is for the stroke style. And the rest I do it all on the color palette here on the bottom. And to set your stroke, you have a few different options. You can, if you have an item selected, I'll select here the hotkey. If I click on the color, it will automatically, instantly set the fill. If I hold down the shift key, and I want to make a, so I was holding down the shift key, then I get the stroke. And if I don't want a stroke, here in the all the way on the left side is the X, and that means no stroke. If I want no fill, then I just click on there, and now it has disappeared, but I'll give it a stroke here for a moment, and there we can deal with only a stroke if you want to. So I'll just go and Control See, so now we're back to there, the original again. Also, what you can do is you can right click on it, and then you can go and set stroke, or you can set the fill. So whichever color you want, set stroke or set fill. Hold the mouse over top, right click, set stroke or set fill. Then for your stroke, you can change the stroke. Let me see here, the stroke here in the stroke style window. We can set the width over here in the stroke style window, but we can also change the stroke style right here in the bottom. And we can do that with the roller wheel, and it will add a certain value, and that value that depends on what is set in the preference window. And you can also go and right click, and you can set it to a specific width, what are presets here. So if you want to have a minimum for a satin, that would be a 1.5. And if you want to go to the 2 mil, then you can just like that right click on it, and you can set your setting. If you're working with inches, you can change it over here also. Then you have the setting is right away 1 inch or 1.5 inch, so that becomes pretty wide. So for that matter, most of the time we are dealing with the millimeters. So that's how you can change that. Or like I say, you can go here to the stroke style and set your, if you need a specific width, you can set your specific width over there. And there too, you can set your millimeters, or the picas, or the pixels, or points, or inches, or centimeters, or percentage. So there you have your choice. Then, so that is on the color palette. Then what we'll do is we'll go here to the shapes for a moment. As are the tools, each tool has its own set of icons. Or I can go back to the screen here for a second. As I have here the select tool, and now I have the option of I can rotate the selection 90 degrees and rotate counterclockwise, or I can flip it horizontally, or I can flip it vertically. So those options are all there. Also here, these 4 icons, they are for lowering it in the objects panel. Lowering or raising, or bring it all the way to the bottom, or bring it all the way to the top. Then the next step, the X and the Y, that is where it is positioned on the screen. And if I'm sliding it straight, as you can see, I can drag it sideways now, and I'm holding down the control key. That way I can drag it specifically on the horizontal axis, and if I move my mouse initially up, then I will drag it on the vertical axis. And as you can see, the number on the y-axis is changing, and the x-axis stays the same. So I'll go and edit, undo the move. Then we see here the width and the height. So if we want to make an adjustment, we can add or we can change the value here. So if we want to have it wider, I can change the value here and we will make it wider. That way it will only make it wider and not higher. And if we want to make it higher, then we change the height value. I'll go and undo those two settings for a moment. And I'll just raise it up here a bit. But now we want to change the value of this, and we want to keep everything in proportion, the width and the height for change. So then what we will do is we will go and turn on the lock, and now we can go and change one of these values and then press the enter button, and then it will automatically change the height value also. So then so that is and here, so scaling, scale the stroke, and scale the radius of rounded corners. There's also icons. Check them out, what it says underneath there, and if they are of any value to you. Sometimes they will be. So you can turn each individually, you can turn them on or off. That depends on what you're planning on accomplishing. So then we go to the next tool. That is the node select tool. The node select tool, I'll zoom in here a little closer. If you find that these nodes are a little too small, you can change that in the preference window. I'm not going to go there, then I have that in another video. Here you can, with this one, you can add more nodes in between. So if we're selecting this node by a single click on there, and with holding the shift key down, and I'm selecting that node, now we can click the plus button here, and it will put another node in between. And we can keep on doing this, and it will put more nodes in between. As you can see, it puts it right in between each one. If we want to delete a node, then we can click here on the minus. Here, let me see here. Okay, now I'm dragging this node. As I'm dragging this node, you can see that is both sides are connected. But now I want to go and split it at that point to make another connection, say. Then what we go and do is we select this node, and then we go and break the path at a selected node. Now it is not that visible right now but you can see there is no red line. What I'll do is I'll turn the fill off for a moment, and I'll set the stroke. Then you can see it better, and I'll change the stroke a little bit. Now you can see that that path has been broken. Now what we can do is we can also drag a box around it. So now both of these nodes are selected. Now we can create a connection in between. We can do that by created with a new segment. So now we get a new segment in between. And if I undo that one for a moment, and we can go and use this one, join the selected nodes. So now those two nodes are connected again. Also, these handles, we can manipulate each of these individual handles. That is a little bit depending on what the setting of your node is. As you can see, I can each individually manipulate them. And if I go and make that node, here you have a selection, make it a corner node, make it a smooth node, and make them symmetric. So if I go and make, let me select this node again. If I go and make that one symmetric, then as you can see, as I'm moving the one side of the handle, the other side of the handle moves also. If we don't want that, then we can go and change it to a corner node, and now I can manipulate each individual side. And we can also select segments. Well, I hardly ever use these two, but we can also select two nodes, and now I lost it. Okay. No, it's not cooperating for me there. Okay, let's forget about that for now. So like I say, I never use these two icons and haven't played enough with them. Also, snapping. Enabled snapping. If I move this node, that depends on what kind of snapping is turned on. There are multi options here with the snapping. Go read through it, or hold your mouse on top of it and see what it says underneath and play with them. And as you can see now, as I'm getting fairly close to this other node, and all of a sudden it will jump because it will connect to that node. Also, if I hold it close enough to this line, it will now snap to that line. And if you have a grid set up, if I view and I'll go and do a page grid, now it will jump on each intersection of the grid, and it will snap right to that corner. And for some instances that can be of value to you to use the grid. So I'll view and I'll turn the grid off. And if you're having guides, we can also have that it snaps to right to the guide. As you can see, when I'm to a certain distance from it, and then it will snap to the guide. So that can also be of value with creating some designs. And to remove this one, you can just drag it off the window. Okay, that is that. Now we go to our shapes. Each shape has its own tool also. We can go and create a shape, and if we're using the shapes here with the rectangle, we are having 2 squares and 1 circle. The reason for the circle is if we're dragging the circle down, we can create a rounded rectangle. And we can also change values over here. So if we want to have here we can set the width, if we want to have that one a specific width, and the height if we want to have a rectangle or a square, then we make the width and the height the same, and we set enter, and then we have a square. Here we will set the corner values. As you can see, I can change this value and not the y value. If I have the x value and the y value the same, then we get an even rounded corner. So if that one becomes the 6/4, now you can see we have a complete rounded corner. And this one is the y value, and this is the x value. As you can see now, the x value and the y value are different. Okay, then the circle. Also, to make a perfect circle, we can hold down the shift key, or is it the control key? I'm always, yeah, with holding down the control key, we can make a perfect circle, but we can also go and set the values here. So that way, if the x and the y are the same, we're getting a perfect circle. And okay, and here with the stars, the same. Here we go with a polygon, so there we can set how many corners we want. And if I want a 10 cornered, and all. So now we have a 10 corners. Then we can have them rounded, or if we want to have sharp corners, if we change this to a 0, then we get the sharp corners, and the randomize gives a weird shape to it. So if you leave that at a 0, then we get a perfect sharp corners. And so the same with all these other shapes to create. Then, in order to be able to use this in Inkstitch, what will have to happen is we have to select the object, because all the shapes are objects and they have to be converted to a path. And once they are a path, then they can be used in Inkstitch. I like to make you aware that with a circle, because with a circle, and if you want to make some changes to it, if you double click on it, as long as it is still an object, you still can make some changes, because here we can also change that it is an open circle. I missed all of a sudden that line going to the center. I don't know exactly what happened there. But if a circle, if we convert that to a path, I'll select it here for a moment, the circle, and drag it a little bit out of the way so I have it by itself. And now I go and path, object to path. And now I'll go extension, ink stitch, troubleshoot object. It will give me an OK now because I have it as a stroke. Now I will go and turn off the stroke and I'll give it a fill. And now we'll see what happens as a fill. Troubleshoot object. Okay, this time it gives me an OK, but it is often that there are two nodes where as an object that we can open it up, that it will give a problem. And as you can see, if I'll give it a different fill here. Now you can see there is no line in between here. There's no red line. And it is because the line is an open object. But the fill, it looks like the full circle. So then what needs to happen is these two nodes, we can go and join the two nodes, and now it is a completely filled circle. And then we can go extension, ink stitch, troubleshoot, and it says it's valid. So, but those two nodes, they can give quite often, will give issues. Okay, I hope this gives you enough information, and we'll see from here how we continue. Okay, thanks for watching and happy digitizing.